So we want to say good morning. Thank you guys for joining us today. We have Curray York and Associates Immigration Law and Lisa York and Adriana Romero. And we are just elated to have them here with us. They are doing this, they reached out, they are doing this for free, and we absolutely appreciate them providing all the community support they can, especially to our students in this time of uncertainty. And we just have a ton of questions, which I know most of the country does, and our community does, and our students do. But now that we have educators on the line, we have counselors here watching and listening, and we do record this for future presentations for students and educators that cannot be here during this time. So I want to go ahead and give it to you, students and educators and parents. If you guys want to ask a question, you can put that in the chat. It is private. Buenos días a todos los padres, estudiantes y mis colegas. Aquí si quieren tienen preguntas, solamente lo tienen que poner en el chat. Eso sí es privado. Viene a mí o también le llega a Adriana si quieren una pregunta privada o si tienen una pregunta privada. Además, ellos van a hacer una presentación. Después de la presentación podemos conectarlos con ellos para que hablen con ellos sobre cosas más específicas que ustedes tengan. O si ustedes también quieren preguntar preguntas aquí, tenemos tiempo, también los podemos hablar de eso después de la presentación. Gracias por venir. Thank you guys all for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and give it to Adriana and Lisa.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to be here and talking to you today about DACA and hopefully some exciting, new, helpful developments in the field of U.S. immigration. Our firm, Curray York Associates, we are a U.S. immigration law firm. My practice specializes in U.S. business immigration law, and I do a little bit of family immigration. I've been practicing immigration law for almost 20 years, and I'm here today with Adriana Romero, who is our firm's resident expert on DACA and family immigration law. And before I turn it over to her, I just want to say, I think everyone is, we're really excited. The last 4 years have been really rough. It's been rough for U.S. immigration. We now have a new administration coming in, and we're very excited about President Biden and his administration's focus on immigration. And that is why we are here today, to kind of talk to you about some of those developments, and hopefully we will continue to have new and exciting developments as time goes on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adriana Romero, and she's going to talk to us about DACA.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. Like Lisa said, my name is Adriana Romero. I'm an attorney with CYA. And today we're going to talk a little bit about DACA as it stands now. But I just want to preface this presentation by just reminding everybody that this is going to be a general overview. Not everything will apply to you specifically. So if you have questions about your case, that's something that we can talk about privately. But this is just a very general overview of what I'm going to practice moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen. Okay. Lisa, does that look good?
Yep, you are up and running.
Okay, perfect. Let's start with, I can't see the chat questions. Okay, so just a quick overview of what DACA is. It is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So what does deferred action mean? It means that it's protection from deportation and you get work authorization. So very important to remember that as it stands now, DACA is not a path to citizenship, right? It's just a temporary program, a temporary protection for certain individuals who arrive in the US as children, okay? So just a little bit of history for DACA and how things have happened so far. It began in the Obama administration in 2012. And then during the Trump administration, it announced its plan to phase out the program, what was supposed to be slowly. So they stopped accepting new applications. They only accepted renewals, and they didn't accept any applications for what's called advanced parole or permission to leave the country. And we will talk more specifically about advanced parole. But a few days after taking office, the Biden administration reinstated the program. So now the program is back to what it looked like in 2012 and during the Obama administration. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll go over the basic requirements for DACA. Again, these do not apply to everybody. It's just very general overview. First, you have to have entered the country before you turn 16. You have to have lived in the United States continuously, so you haven't moved out of the United States. You were born before June 16th, 1981, and you were physically present in the United States during two important times. One was June 15th in 2012, when the program started, and you have to be in the United States at the time that you submit your application. Other requirements is that you did not have lawful status, or you fell out of status on June 15th, 2012. And you have to be enrolled in either a vocational program in high school, in a GED program, or you have to have completed high school or a GED program, or been discharged and gotten an honorable discharge from the armed forces. Also, you cannot have been convicted of any felonies, any serious misdemeanors, or 3 or more misdemeanors. And you cannot, the USCIS can't find you to be a threat to national security. We'll talk a little bit about that. As far as the physical presence requirement, you do have a continuous residence requirement. However, if you left the country for a short time for humanitarian purposes, then that time won't be counted against you. As far as, I know a lot of people have questions about what kind of evidence do I have to show that I've been living here during the required period. There isn't a specific list, right? There isn't a specific requirement. There's just, the USCIS has given us a lot of ideas of things that we can submit. Things like rent records, school records, medical records, bills, religious certificates, pictures of vacations in the United States, anything really that will show that you were in the United States during this period. And Yvette, let me know if I'm missing any questions. I can't see my chat while I'm sharing my screen.
I will. They haven't come in yet, but the ones who have joined us recently, if you guys have questions, the chat is private, just an update, and it either goes to Adriana or myself, and we could address those during or after the presentation. Thank you.
Great. And also let me know if we want to do these slides in Spanish. We have plenty of time to do so. Okay, what is advanced parole? A lot of people were very excited when DACA was reinstated because of advanced parole. There are definitely a lot of benefits to it, but it is also it's risky, right, to leave the country. So what it is USCIS accepts applications for people who are here unlawfully or undocumented, and it's special permission to leave the country, right? And you can apply for this advanced parole for 3 different reasons. If you need to leave the country for a humanitarian purpose, and that usually means, if you need to attend a funeral, if you need to receive medical treatment that you cannot find anywhere in the United States, or for a humanitarian purpose. And those can be rushed if need be. The other reason is educational purposes, right? So if your university is sending you somewhere and you need to attend a conference, you need to attend a specific course outside of the United States, you can apply. And the third and final reason is for employment purposes. So again, if your employer requires you to leave the country as part of your job, then you can apply. There is a separate fee, there's a different form, there's a whole different process to apply for advanced parole. Now, very important to remember that reentry is not guaranteed when you apply for advanced parole. So you can leave the country, but when you come to the border, they still need to evaluate whether you can be admitted or paroled into the United States. And that usually has to do with whether they think you're a threat to national security or if you have a criminal record. So it's not guaranteed. So it is a little risky, right? And this is where we advise that you talk to your immigration attorney and you can make that evaluation and whether the risk is worth it to you. Because some of the benefits are that once you re-enter the country and you're paroled in, that opens the door to other ways that you may be able to adjust residency. So that is, again, something we discuss on a personal basis. Questions about what kind of criminal convictions make me ineligible. Like I mentioned, they're felonies, as well as what USCIS considers serious misdemeanors. And they may include these violations on your screen. It also includes any crimes that you were convicted for 90 days or more. It's not necessarily, none of these crimes are necessarily automatically disqualify you, but they will make it very difficult to receive DACA. Another thing is 3 misdemeanors, right? Whether they're considered serious or not. 3 misdemeanors or more, then you will not be, you will be ineligible based on your criminal convictions. Okay, so we have time for questions or to go through our slide in Spanish if we need to. But I want to go over, first of all, this question at the beginning is a lot of people ask us, who can help me with my DACA application and who can advise me whether I'm eligible or not? Very, very, very important. There are only 2 types of people, two groups of people that are authorized to advise you on this form. And that is 1, your immigration attorney. And 2, it is a USCIS has designated officials that are allowed to fill out these forms and give out advice on these forms. So that means that you either complete your form by yourself and you submit it by yourself, or you talk to one of these 2 groups of people. It's very important that we protect our community from fraud or notario fraud that we call in the immigration world. And that's people who are charging you and advising you on how to fill out these applications and sending them in for you. This is very dangerous for many reasons, and mainly the regulations in immigration are changing so fast that these people aren't always trained on those changes. So they could be giving you bad advice. So these include people like at our tax places or people that are working under their own name. If you have questions about who is authorized to help you with these forms, please let us know. We can definitely point you in the right direction. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen there and go ahead and continue with Yvette, requirements to receive one. Was that for advanced parole? Sorry, I missed it.
This question came to me. So whoever asked this question, we try not to say your names, but if you can clarify, the question was, what are the requirements to receive one? What exactly are you guys asking? Like a DACA status? Is that what you guys are asking? Maybe if that, yeah, I would.
Sure.
If you can, yeah, address that. And if it's not that, they'll probably let us know.
Sure. So we can definitely go over the basic requirements again. They're the same that they were during the Obama administration, right? So you have to have entered the United States before you turn 16. You have to have lived in the United States continuously since June 2007, meaning you didn't move anywhere outside of the country. If you left the country for a short period for a humanitarian purpose, we won't count that against you. You have to have been born after June 16th, 1981. And then you have to have been physically present in the United States in June 2012 and during the time that you're submitting your application. And then very important, you have to either be enrolled in school, whether that's high school, a GED program, a vocational program, or you have to have already completed one of those programs, or have been honorably discharged from the armed forces. You cannot have any criminal convictions that are either felonies, serious misdemeanors, or 3 or more misdemeanors. And you can't be a threat to national security as USCIS defines it. Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify, somebody's asking, they can join the military services with DACA status?
Yes.
Okay, that's great to know.
Mhm.
Another question we have here is, could you recommend immigration offices located near Westminster, or, I mean, do you guys have any resources in this area for our students?
Right. So immigration offices as far as nonprofit organizations or attorneys in the area?
Probably both. And again, if you guys don't have time or you need to do some more research, you can send that over to me, email me those to me, and we can post them and I can send them to the group of inquiries later.
Yes, I think we can definitely send you a list of resources and organizations that are helping right now with DACA applications or DACA advice. I can send that to you.
Great. And then another question is, what are some of the issues that you guys come up against often, whether it's parents or students, in this realm of kind of uncertainty?
Sure. So one of the biggest concerns that parents have is my children's information going to be shared with ICE, right? Where is this information going? So the rule technically right now, USCIS keeps this information secure, and ICE only has access to it or only requests access from USCIS if you are a threat to national security. And once they make that determination, they can attempt to access that information. There has been some evidence that ICE has tried to access this information without making the determination that you're a threat to national security, but we don't see that as being a big issue. So again, it is a balance that we make for you personally, depending on what your attorney advises. But for the most part, generally, your information that you provide with your DACA application is secure. And we don't include information when a student is applying, a child is applying, we don't include information about your parents. So if your parents are here unlawfully or undocumented, that doesn't put your parents at risk. Another issue that we overcome when we're completing these applications is, like we talked about, is the type of evidence that we need to submit, right? A lot of parents, rightly so, don't have a lot of documents in their name or their children's name that can prove their physical presence. So that's when we get creative and we talk about pictures, medical records, school records, and we can definitely come up with different ways to show your presence, your physical presence.
Awesome. There's a few more questions that I sent you.
Okay.
One is, how much does a DACA application cost and how long does that normally take?
Okay. So right now, as far as USCIS fees, I know there's been a lot of talk about changing in fees, and it's gone back and forth and back and forth. So as it is right now, the application itself costs $495. And that's just what you send to USCIS. And usually the preparer, the attorney, also has a fee, or there are some organizations that can prepare them for free. But that application, you send it in, your money order with the $495. And now that the normal program has been reinstated by Biden, once you're granted DACA, you have work authorization and deferred action for 2 years.
What happens after 2 years?
After 2 years, you renew your application. So you pay that fee again to receive another 2 years of work authorization. And we usually recommend that you start applying for that renewal 6 months before your current EAD, your current work authorization expires.
And what happens if you let it go? I've known some parents who just, of course, students most of the time don't take the initiative. So if the parents just let it go, what happens?
So that was a very big concern during the Trump administration, right? Because during the Trump administration, only renewals were being accepted. So if you wanted to keep your status, you had to apply on time and apply as a renewal. Now that they're accepting initial applications right now, if you miss your renewal period, you just have to apply for an initial again, which is very, again, document heavy. When you do an initial application, this is when you're sending in all of the evidence. A renewal requires a lot less documentation. But if it happens, we'll just send in a new initial.
So every 2 years they have to pay $495. It doesn't matter if it's a renewal or initial first application.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Is there any point in time where they extend the DACA approval, and instead of doing it every 2 years, is there a point in time where they extend it for 4 years or 5 years, or do they do it the rest of their life?
I wish, right? As of now, for right now, the DACA program is just a temporary program. I know that President Biden has expressed an interest in making this a path to citizenship, but as of now, it's only 2 years at a time. And during the Trump administration, if you got a renewal, at some point they were only giving 1 year at a time. If that's the case, if you have a 1 year work authorization, USCIS by court order is supposed to make it automatically a 2 year EAD, but 2 years at a time is all we have right now.
Wow. Okay. Somebody asked in the chat, can someone apply for DACA if they came to the U.S. after 2012? And from what I gathered, they cannot, right?
That's right. You have to have been physically present inside the United States on June 15th, 2012.
Okay. And typically, do you guys support families that don't have the financial means, or do you recommend resources for them to go to in order to get help with this application process?
Right. Lisa, I'll turn that one over to you.
Yeah, we can provide resources that either help with these types of applications, either what we would call low bono, which would be like low cost fees. And there are a number of organizations that are helping folks complete these applications on a pro bono, which means no legal fee basis. And we can provide you with that information. And these would be like authorized kind of organizations that are authorized by the Immigration Service to kind of help people with this type of work.
Awesome, thank you. Let me see here. What kind of questions are asked in this application?
Yeah, so the application will ask a lot of just biographical information, and it will ask for the applicant's current address. It'll ask for addresses you've lived in since for that physical presence requirement. So we'll have to list all those addresses, current employment information, and information about the school program you're currently in, as well as any information regarding criminal conviction. So just
for the student or for the parents, for both, or just the student?
Just the student. So again, very important to know that the information provided is just for the applicant. The student that is applying we do not have to supply any information about the parents.
Who submits the application? Wouldn't the parents or a guardian or?
Right. So if you have an attorney and a preparer, we sign the application. If the applicant is younger than 14, yes, a guardian has to provide a signature for them. But technically, the person submitting the application is the student, the applicant, the DACA student. So it's not the parent. If they have to provide a signature, we can advise you on how to do that. But no, none of their personal information will be included.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else? ¿Tienen preguntas en español? Si necesitan que les diga algo en el chat en español, también les puedo interpretar o ayudar. We have a few parents here, which is great. Any other questions that come up in your classrooms, educators?
One of the questions that I usually get is, especially now with the Biden administration, what about parents? Is there a program for parents or a DAPA? There is not yet, right? There isn't a program for parents of childhood arrivals right now. So if you do hear of people saying, come apply here or come do it proactively, it's almost here. That is something to be very careful about, and making sure you're not providing your information to any unauthorized people or people who are not attorneys filling out these applications, because until you see it a notification from USCIS, we know there is not an application for parents. Hopefully President Biden has expressed interest in maybe fleshing out a program that would make some sort of status available for parents, but right now we don't. Another question students get is, what if I don't want to work or I don't need to work? Is there a benefit? And that's when we talked about, yes, right, you get a social security number and protection from deportation for those 2 years. So applying to DACA doesn't mean automatically that you're applying to work. You get work authorization with DACA, but it's not required.
So when they apply for a job, do they have a DACA number, or you do provide them with a social?
So they have a social security number. They have a temporary social security number. So when you receive your work permit, it is a small red card. I don't have an example, a small red card, and then the Social Security Administration will also send you a social security card with your number on it, and it'll say, that it's temporary and it's not it doesn't grant you status. So when you apply for a job, you use those two cards together, and your employer will know that you are able to work. And you use that number to file your taxes as well.
Awesome. I'm sorry if I missed this, but what is the application process from submitting to being accepted?
I'm sorry, submitting
the application to getting accepted or approved?
Sure, yeah. So USCIS requires that you send in a few different forms. So one is the actual Daca form. It is what is it? It's on the USCIS website. It's the I-821D. That is the DACA application. So you submit that application. You also submit an I-765, which is the work authorization application. And there's a additional worksheet that you submit. So when you go to the USCIS website, it gives you instructions to include all those forms. And then you also have a list of evidence that they want you to send in with your packet.
So once you send in all that application, all the information, all the evidence, what normally is the time that you get a message or information about approval?
Sure. So normal, and when I mean normal, I say normally, I mean pre-COVID times. Unfortunately, COVID has made our waiting times sort of wonky. What should happen is you submit your application, and then within 2 to 4 weeks, you receive a receipt. And that receipt has a case number on it where you can go online and sort of track your case. It's not very informative. But from there, an application is supposed to take 3 to 5 months. We have seen it take a lot longer, or a renewal be a lot faster. The renewal application can be just 2 to 3 months. So unfortunately, I can't give you an exact timeline,
Sure.
but we know where it should be. And hopefully, as we deal with COVID a little better, we can get those processing times a lot faster.
That's great. I did put in the chat the consideration of deferred action for childhood arrivals for DACA. It is the link that if anyone that is listening is interested in, you guys can copy and paste it there. I think that's the correct one, right, Adriana and Lisa?
Yeah, I'm
You
looking
guys
at
have a
it.
different one? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent.
And the guidelines are there. The filing process fee is there. Let me see if I can pull that up here on my screen. So this is what it looks like. And if you can put it, make it, if you look at it in Espanol, you can just click up on top and this page can automatically be translated into Spanish. So, opiniones y comentarios. Si quieren participar, they always try to get your opinions. So this is in Spanish as well. So if you guys ever have any support or need. What other questions do we have? Any educators that have students? I know we have a lot of educators who have students that are watching. What kind of questions are you guys getting from your students? Or maybe they don't know, or if they are private, you can certainly send them to me later and I'll send them over to Lisa and Adriana.
Yeah.
But I guess the one thing as a Future Center career coach, my question is, until we get more, is how do you become an immigration attorney? So let's just change it a little bit until we get more questions about DACA. That's my question for you guys. We have maybe about 10 minutes.
Adriana, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my parents are immigrants from Mexico, and I'm from a very small town here in Colorado, in Carbondale, Colorado. So I did not know how you're supposed to become an immigration attorney, but I knew I wanted to be one. I never met a lawyer until I was already in law school. So I just knew that in high school, I had to really focus on my grades and look for my undergrad opportunities. However, later I learned that you don't have to have perfect grades. You don't have to have a perfect score on everything. There are definitely many ways to get into law school. So first, after graduating high school, you apply to your normal 4-year program or university, or even a community college, a 2-year program leading you on to a 4-year program. Once you have your bachelor degree, it does not matter what you get your major in. You don't have to major in criminal justice or any of the normal paths. And then when you graduate your bachelor program, you take what's called an LSAT. Yeah, right? LSAT. Right. You take an entrance exam. So you study for that for a little while. And it's a standardized test, much like the ACT or SAT. And then you use your score to apply to law schools. So your law schools will consider your LSAT score and your grades from your bachelor program. And then law school, there are many different types of law school. I went to DU, so did Lisa. And they offer an evening program, so you can work during the day or do something else and go to school in the evening. Or they offer a full-time program during the day. And law school is usually 3 to 4 years. And then once you graduate law school, you take what's called the bar. And that's another really big test. And that's to get your license from the state so that you can practice in court and advise people.
Yep. And I would just add, law school, you do not specialize in a particular area of law when you're in law school. So if you want to be an immigration lawyer, most of law school is going to be learning all different other types of law, not immigration law. And it's after you get out and are licensed and have your first job that you really start specializing in your area of practice. And I think I would just say that I I fell in love with immigration law over 20 years ago. It's a very, very rewarding area of law to practice in because you get to help people. And I think what draws, it's what drawed me to this area of law. I'm sure it's what's drawn Adriana and all the other attorneys that work in our office. And we also have a wonderful immigration bar. There are lots of immigration attorneys, not only in Colorado, but all over the country and throughout the world, who love practicing in this area of law.
Thank you. There is a question. Aside from what, Adriana, are you a DACA student?
So I am not. I was privileged enough that my parents got status before I was born, and then I was born here. So I'm not a DACA student, but I am very familiar with the process, and I do have classmates who are DACA students and still graduate law school and still pass the bar and can still be attorneys. So don't let that stop you if you want to, if you think law school is an option for you. Definitely, I'm happy to give anybody tips or talk about my experience, but it's doable.
I would love to have you on as a guest speaker to talk about your experience through high school and law school and tips you can give to some of our students who are interested in that area. Maybe not necessarily immigration law, but just law or the criminal justice area generally. Here is a question about DACA. Does an employer have to know if you are a potential employee with a DACA card, or can they tell by the temporary social security number that has been assigned to you?
So when you apply to a new job, you complete a form that's called an I-9, and your employer does that for tax purposes and everything. And for that, when you apply for a job, you have to show evidence that you have work authorization. And there's a list, right, of different types of documents that you can show. If you don't have a US passport, you can show these documents. So for a DACA recipient, you would show your card. And yes, it does have a code on it that indicates what kind of work authorization you have. If your employer is familiar with the code, they will know. But most importantly, that card has an expiration date. So they know that you only have work authorization from this date until this date. So it's not necessarily that you have to tell them, but most employers will know.
Great. Any other questions, you guys? We only have a couple more minutes. One of the questions I have that came up is, if you have your card, you have the date, and you work past that date, whose responsibility is it to, is it the employer? Is it both? Is it DACA, employee? Whose responsibility is it to give them a heads up if it expires?
It's both. Yes, your employer is supposed to ask you once your card is expired for new evidence of new work authorization. In our experience, I feel like employers are pretty on top of it and they're keeping track of those dates. But most important for yourself, for the DACA recipient, it can definitely affect your status later if you work without authorization. So I think it's very important for you to be keeping track of those dates and that you're renewing and not working when you don't have work authorization, no matter what your employer, even if your employer hasn't reminded you, because it will affect you later in other types of applications. So very important to renew on time. And if you accidentally forget, then you don't have work authorization until your new card comes in.
Okay, and what if, I know you mentioned starting the renewal application early. Can they submit the renewal application before the expiration date, or does it have to be like on it? I mean, how close does it have to be before the expiration date?
So USCIS will accept renewal applications before the expiration date, and we definitely advise that you do it before, so that way there's no lapse, right? There's no hole in your work authorization. And we know it's taking months to adjudicate or to approve a new application. So you can start applying 150 days, 180 days before, so that's when you should submit it. so that they're processing your new application before your current one expires, and then you'll be golden, right? You can continue working when your new approval comes in.
Awesome. And do they give you a letter? Do they give you a heads up saying that they received the application is in process, or you're just kind of waiting?
Yep, no, so that is that receipt notice that you get 2 to 4 weeks after you submit your application. They'll give you a receipt for the money that you sent in, and they'll give you that case number, and they'll give you a date that your application is pending as of this date. And that's your evidence that you've already applied for your renewal. And you can show that to your employer if they require evidence that you've already applied.
And I know that the application process is already pretty expensive. So when they get an attorney or lawyer to help, if it's not low bono or pro bono, they can certainly try the application on their own, right? Like people apply on their own all the time. And if they need a little guidance, maybe it would be less expensive just to get somebody to consult them at the end. But that is a way, I guess, to save money.
Right. So yeah, definitely talking to an attorney or to an organization about your eligibility is an option. And then they can say, you know, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, you are eligible. And then they can go on and attempt to submit the application on their own. Definitely. What we don't advise is that you go to an unauthorized person and they try to make the determination whether you're eligible or not, because if they make the wrong determination and then you submit paperwork, now you've provided USCIS personal information and put yourself at risk possibly, right? So if you have questions about whether you're eligible or not, you can start with that, and then you can go off and do the application by yourself.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think the question comes up often about, like, when do I need an attorney? When should I hire an attorney? And I would say, like, with a DACA application, if there's any type of arrest or criminal history, you definitely need to hire an attorney. You do not want to be doing that on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that information. Adriana, I have a question and a comment that someone just sent over. Está en español, entonces vamos a estar platicando. So they're asking if they can go to that website, la aplicación, y después buscamos ayuda para mandarla con evidencia. So they can go to that website that I put in the chat. But first and foremost, you just highly recommend that they talk to an attorney to make sure that they do qualify.
Right. So primero vamos a la página del sitio web y determinamos si somos elegibles para recibir DACA, ¿verdad? Y si tienen preguntas, si son elegibles o no, ahí es cuando recomendamos que vayan y hablen con un abogado o una persona autorizada para dar este tipo de asesorarlos sobre el DACA, ¿verdad? No recomendamos que vayan a gente que ya la han hecho o que preparan impuestos o que son notarios, ¿verdad? Que según dan información sobre el DACA, pero no están autorizados. No lo recomendamos porque ahorita la ley de DACA está cambiando rápidamente. Si no están seguros si califican o no, hablan con un abogado y ellos les dicen sí son elegibles o no lo son. Ya cuando ustedes sepan si son elegibles o no, es cuando empezamos con los formularios. Si tienen abogado, el abogado o abogada, nosotros preparamos los formularios. Ustedes no se preocupan por eso y nosotros les avisamos qué evidencias necesitamos. Si eligen no llevar abogado, ustedes mismos sí imprimen los formularios, los llenan y mandan toda la información que está ahí en el sitio web. Y todos los recibos, toda la información les llega directamente a ustedes. Cuando tiene un abogado, les llega los recibos, las aprobaciones, todo les llega a los abogados.
Y luego, pues, like we said that, you know, it was coming to an end here, and I know some of our teachers are probably to jump off, but we want to thank you guys for coming so much. Thank you. Gracias por la información. This was I already had an email of somebody that said, thank you so much. This gave me so much hope. And that's what we want. We want to give people hope. And to me, it gives me goosebumps to know that we're doing the right thing. And I did put, you know, a link in the chat for the guest speaker surveys. We want to continue providing relevant and pertinent information to our parents, our community, our students, our educators. And we really thank you guys, Lisa and Adriana, for coming. The resources and lists, if you guys provide those and send those as an email, I can send them out to our school and educators and counselors to make sure that they can utilize the resources around it. And yes, muchas gracias por atender nuestra sesión. Por favor, manténganos en contacto con lo que necesiten. Aquí les podemos ayudar en cualquier cosa. Y pues, gracias por venir. Y todo esto está grabado. Lo vamos a poner en nuestro YouTube, la página de nuestro YouTube. Esto también lo puedo poner aquí en el chat. Y para esta tarde o para mañana pueden ir a ver o mandar con su familia, sus esposos, sus tías, sus tíos, sus primos, anybody. If you guys the video, hopefully we'll be able to upload it and get it in by this afternoon. If not, for sure tomorrow. Share it with others. Show it in your classes that weren't able to be here. And again, we appreciate all you do, and we appreciate all the information that you guys provided today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you for having us. And I would have to say, we're very hopeful too.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys and have a great day. And I'll send you the link as well, Lisa and Adriana, on where you guys are landed. So you guys can do a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for whoever attended. Adios.
Bye-bye.